you live in a busy or big city, or you just moved to one, driving can feel intimidating. Crowded streets, unpredicted traffic, lots of pedestrians, cyclists, other drivers, and tight parking spots. But driving in a city is a skill, and like any skill, we can master it with the right mindset and practice. So in this video, I'm going to show you small and big tips for city driving to help you feel more confident and comfortable. Driving in the city can and should be an enjoyable experience. Trust me, I'm talking from experience. When I have just started driving, you should have seen me how stressful I was. But over time, with practice and experience, I enjoy driving in the city every day. When you drive in a busier urban area, you're constantly surrounded by potential hazards. So that's why defensive driving is crucial. And if you don't know what defensive driving means, it means reducing risks by anticipating potential dangers on the road and avoiding them. And whenever I talk to someone who is just starting out driving, I keep telling them to assume that every driver on the road is a bad driver. And it can sound pessimistic, I know. But if you assume that every other driver will make a mistake, like they will cut you off, they will tailgate you, they'll not use their turn signal properly, or maybe they will stop in the middle of the street for no reason. And if you anticipate all of these things, it is so much easier to avoid them. So once we are in the right mindset, what are the actions we can do to implement those defensive driving techniques? And in my opinion, the most important act of defensive driving is to leave enough space between your car and other cars. And I don't mean just leave enough space between your car and the car in front of you, but also between your car and the car behind you and on the sides as well. Since we already assume that everyone else is a bad driver, it will be wise to leave more space between them and you. And it's also a good idea to leave extra space for drivers who seem to you maybe extra aggressive, or they have a sporadic way of driving. And a good example is that we have public transportation as well in the city. If you know that there is lots of public transportation in your city, be prepared to yield to them, be prepared to stop for them. But as you know, cities don't only consist of drivers and cars. They also involve pedestrians and cyclists. And what's more important, pedestrians and cyclists are the most vulnerable users of our public roads, which means we have to be extra careful to give enough room for them. It's a good timing, and we're coming towards a park in my area, which has lots of pedestrians and cyclists usually, so hopefully we'll encounter some of them and show you an example of how to give enough space for them. So as you can see, we have a sidewalk on the left where people walk around with their dogs, maybe they're running, just enjoying themselves. We want to be extra careful in these kind of situations. In these areas, you don't want to be always on your accelerating pedal. You want to be always prepared to stop at any second, because there could be kids playing around, maybe some dog will go off the leash and jump in the road. You want to be prepared for that. And when you're approaching a pedestrian crossing like this, just ease off your foot from the accelerator. Again, have your foot ready on your brake pedal and be prepared to stop. As I said, people are much more vulnerable than cars, and that's why we have to give them way, we have to give them space. For example, here, I see sometimes people blasting through places like this, where there's lots of people walking on the sidewalk. I don't understand why. First of all, they're being loud and they're being disrespectful to other people, and second of all, it is much more dangerous. For example, in this case, there's a blind spot. I don't see any person behind this car. I don't want to be sitting on my throttle pedal all the time. I want to be ready to stop. So in these places where people walk around, enjoying their day, we want to be extra careful and just respectful. But let's actually talk about the next topic, which is handling aggressive and unpredictable drivers. People who live in a city most likely have a busier and hence more stressful lifestyle. And that is why we see more unpredictable and more reckless drivers in the city. And trust me, if you live in a city on a daily basis, you will encounter those drivers. So it is better to be prepared. Some of those drivers will try to tailgate you, will try to cut you off and piss you off. But your goal is to stay calm and not engage. For example, let's say someone is tailgating me right now from the back. I will let them pass. I would not try to brake check them or try to be aggressive in return. There's no point of doing that. We just want to stay calm and avoid the confrontation. I personally think, and hopefully many of you do, that wasting your time and energy on road rage and dealing with those people, there's so much better things we can do with our lives rather than trying to be aggressive with someone on the road and try to teach someone a lesson. It's just not worth it. I prefer to enjoy my day, enjoy my driving, enjoy my car, and not let anyone ruin my experience. And I feel like this is a great segue to my next segment, which I want to talk about, which is anticipation and scanning. I think 90% of your enjoyment or less stress while driving in the city comes from anticipation. And this anticipation comes from being able to scan your surroundings every few seconds. And what I mean by that is, of course, be aware of what's happening in front of you. I hope it's a given. And then, for a glimpse moment, try to check your rearview mirror and your side mirrors. By doing it every 5 to 10 seconds, you'll be much more aware of what is happening around you all the time. If you've ever played games with a top-down view, like on a 2D map, I like to think about it that way. I try to imagine myself in a car on a 2D map, and every time I scan around me, I kind of fill in this map around me. So if there's a car that tries to overtake me, I will be aware of that ahead of time because I scanned for it maybe 2 or 3 seconds ago. I hope that makes sense. But let's say you drive every day to work or to school, and you are encountering the same route every day. That's a good opportunity for us, especially in the city, to kind of learn all of the driving patterns that happen every day. For example, you might know approximately how much time does the green light last on this very intersection. Or you might notice that, for example, in this street, there's many of cars trying to parallel park. There's lots of restaurants, lots of banks, urgent care. So people will try to do parallel parking here. And if you know this area, you would know that you might encounter a person who will parallel park and you'll have to yield for them. So in this case, you might think it will be nice to stay in this lane instead, ahead of time. I honestly like to choose the perfect lane at whatever street I'm going at. For example, I've driven on the street hundreds of times, and that's why I know kind of an ideal lane I have to switch to in any particular situation. This upcoming intersection is a great example. I will switch my lane to the right beforehand right here, and let me explain you why. So most of the times, people will try to turn left at this intersection. This is exactly what is happening right now. So I like to switch to the right lane beforehand because I know I'm going to be stuck behind those people. And this is a great example of anticipation. Since I've learned all of the patterns, I know that I have to be in this lane at that particular moment. I live in Vancouver, and I think 70 to 80% of the intersections don't have a specific left turn lane. And that means it is so easy to get stuck behind people that are trying to turn left on an intersection because they have to yield to the upcoming traffic. So they're gonna stay still. And the same can happen if you stay in this rightmost lane. Some people will try to turn right, and you see there's pedestrians over here, which could be crossing the street. So they again will be staying still to yield to the pedestrians, and you're gonna be stuck behind them. So if you drive the same route every day, I highly recommend to you to learn the patterns and try to identify the ideal lane you have to be driving at. And again, as you can see, it is also a good practice to anticipate pedestrians and cyclists to cross the street and to yield to them. And sometimes you can encounter people who are trying to cross the street at the very last second. For example, here you see that there's a timer for the pedestrians to cross the street, Some people can do it when it's just 2 or 3 seconds left. So you have to be aware of those pedestrians as well, or cyclists, and be prepared to stop at any moment. And this all comes to your anticipation and scanning skills. Since you're scanning everything all around you every few seconds, you know the position of all pedestrians and cars around you. Isn't that great? In most North American cities, there's a rule that you can turn right on red. So even though it's a red light for me, I can turn right on this junction if there's no upcoming traffic coming from this side. And I think it's all fine. But the problem comes when people are not checking for pedestrians. So they check for the upcoming traffic coming from the left, but they don't check for the upcoming pedestrian traffic. In this situation, there is no pedestrians or cyclists around, but sometimes people are not looking for them, and that's a problem. So a good tip for you is to check for the upcoming traffic first, but then double check for pedestrians and cyclists trying to cross the road. So right now we're turning left on the intersection, so we have to do the same procedure. I look for the upcoming traffic coming towards me, but then I have to scan for people trying to cross the street as well. No people around, I turn left. I've seen too many videos when drivers trying to turn left, they wait for the upcoming traffic, but then they see a pedestrian trying to cross the street, and then they're stuck in this situation in the middle of the road, and the upcoming traffic can just hit them and T-bone them. And you don't want to be in that situation. The next step is to plan your route in advance. Especially if you're going into the part of the city that you haven't been before, it is great to use online maps like Waze, Google Maps, or Apple Maps, whichever one you choose. So before you actually drive, set up your route and make sure you're comfortable with it. But the other crucial tip is parking. Usually in busier cities, it is much harder to find a parking space. So try to plan in advance. Maybe ask a friend who's been to that place. If you don't have someone who knows about it, what I like to do is to use some parking apps. There's lots of apps you can use to find parking, but what I personally use is called Spot Angels. It just shows you the map with all the potential parking spots that are available. And please don't repeat my mistakes. Whenever I haven't researched in advance about the parking situation in the area I'm going to, especially if you're running late for some kind of an appointment, it is such a pain in the butt to try to find parking on the spot. And after you park your car, it is always a great practice to take this stuff with you, like your backpack, or if you have a sedan like me, try to leave it in the trunk so it's not visible from the outside. I think in most busier cities, especially in bad neighborhoods, it is very likely to have your stuff stolen from someone breaking into your car. And sometimes this street can get very busy, and I know that many people are nervous when they're trying to parallel park under pressure. And to solve this issue, there's only one solution, is to find a very, very quiet place like this, maybe a residential area with lots of parallel parking around, and just practice yourself with no pressure. After you do like 100 times, you'll get better and you won't get any stress, even if someone else is waiting for you, because you're gonna do it very fast, very efficiently, and you'll be enjoying yourself. So driving in the city could feel very overwhelming and very stressful. I get this, but with experience and time, it's just like second nature. And the whole goal to become comfortable and confident while driving in the city is to enjoy driving more. Due to the reasons I explained to you in this video, lots of people out there living in the city kind of hate driving because they don't want to be dealing with this stress all the time. So I hope that some tips from this video and the whole video is going to be valuable for some people. And I'm pretty sure I missed some of the good tips out there. So if I missed any, please let me know in the comments below. And I am genuinely curious, what is your biggest challenge when you're driving in the city? Please also share your thoughts in the comment section as well. And if you found this video useful, you should watch this video, which is going to explain to you what you need to do if you're nervous about driving at night. So as always, keep enjoying the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.